Carla, thanks for joining me. Looking back on 2023 and head to the next year, what do you think the biggest issue facing Saskatchewan is?
Number one issue, and we hear this, it doesn't matter which community we're in, is cost of living for people in this province. We heard that in the by-elections, and unfortunately I don't think that is getting better for people in the province right now.
Why do you say that?
A number of issues. The number of people that we see in the province who are reporting, difficulty paying their bills at the end of the month. Number of mortgages and arrears in this province higher than any other province. But really the first-hand accounts from people in the province. We were on thousands of doorsteps during the by-elections. And the stories we heard from people about how difficult it was for them to get groceries for their family. The number of people who were taking out additional jobs just to pay for basics. I think of one mom who was very excited. Her daughter had made a provincial sports team, healthcare worker, and in order to pay for that, she was having to take on an additional job just to pay for that. People not being able to pay for camping trips. As we move into the holiday season, people's ability to put gifts under the tree, looking forward to next year and how they're going to be able to continue to pay the bills. It really is the number one issue we're hearing from people.
What should be done about that?
There are a number of things. One of the things that we've put forward as an immediate measure is for calling for a suspension of the fuel tax. Something that we've proposed be done for 6 months. We've seen provinces like Manitoba put this in place, for example, something that would put over $300 back in people's pockets. It's one measure, but there is definitely a need for people to get some relief right now.
You talked about cost of living a lot this year, also healthcare. What are your concerns when it comes to how people are able to access healthcare in the province right now?
I guess the biggest concern is around people's ability to access, whether it was family doctors. We talked about the fact at one point in recent months there were no family doctors available in our largest city in Saskatoon who were able to take new patients. The number of emergency rooms that were on bypass in recent months, concerns about diagnostics at the Pasqua Hospital here, and of course the inability of women in the southern part of the province to get access to mammogram care, for example, in this province. Those concerns continue to be raised alongside the concerns of healthcare workers who report working chronically short, forced overtime, not being able to take vacation, and they're signaling, as they have been for years, that there's a crisis in our healthcare system. There's a crisis in terms of retaining healthcare staff, and they really want to be part of the solution. That's not something we've seen the government take them up on.
When it comes to what happened before the sitting even started, we had an emergency session called by the Premier to put through a parental rights bill, use of the notwithstanding clause. Your caucus was outspoken about their opposition to how that was being handled and the contents of that bill in some cases. When you look back on that and where we are now, what are your thoughts on how that was handled and what it means for students and families in the province?
Yeah. So right after the by-elections, and again, at a time when we'd been talking to thousands of people in the province, this was not an issue that was raised by anyone that I talked to on the doorstep. We did see it raised by the Saskatchewan United Party in the by-election, particularly in Lumsden. The government's response to that was calling an emergency session, something we haven't seen in this province for a quarter century, to deal with an issue that even the Premier could not point to a single instance where the concern that they were bringing forward actually had happened in the province. So I think that's deeply concerning. First of all, it was a highly divisive issue. There's no debate about the fact that it's important for parents to be involved in their children's education. I've not heard anyone who doesn't support that. We certainly support that. It's something that we've heard teachers and parents and school boards talk about the need for improving that home and school communication for years. That is not what the government sought to do, I'm afraid. I think this was about distracting from their own problems, some of the results in the by-elections, and an attempt to further divide instead of actually tackle the issues that are facing Saskatchewan people. Like I said, like we've talked about, cost of living, healthcare, or even the long list of issues that we see in our classrooms. Decreasing reading rates, chronic underfunding, concerns about children not getting the supports that they need. I think the other thing that was surprising about that, or perhaps not, after that emergency session, you saw the Premier not want to talk about it at all, sort of washed his hands of it, which was incredibly frustrating, given that they knew also going in the very real concerns that introducing this bill, that inflaming this debate was going to have on already vulnerable kids in our classrooms.
Another divisive point in the last couple of months was the protest that happened here at the legislature and kind of the fallout, even a few weeks after, with government House Leader and the Premier making some accusations about your caucus, about the party, accusations of anti-Semitism, and even, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, characterizing those who came to protest as rioters. Mm-hmm. What is your reaction to that and that event and some of the characterizations by the government?
Mm-hmm. I think, first of all, again, the willingness of this government to lean into division, to pit groups in our province against each other, to use inflammatory rhetoric like we saw from the Premier and especially from the government House Leader, I think is very irresponsible. Of course, the events of October 7th, the subsequent events, hostages and particularly the killing of civilians in huge numbers, is something that is deeply impactful, especially to those in this province who have direct contact or family members living in the region. As I said at the start of this, I've said several times since, as leaders, I think we have a responsibility when you see such a highly charged, emotional, impactful issue as this, to not lean into division and inflame rhetoric, as we saw the government do, but to look for that common ground, to increase understanding, to have empathy, to sit with groups and have them express what their concerns are. That was the path that we chose, and I was deeply disappointed, frustrated, and frankly angry with the path that we saw the government take on this.
The last week of the sitting, the Premier was in Dubai. Your caucus and yourself made a lot of the cost that trip was going to cost taxpayers. Now that the Premier has returned and you've seen some of the coverage and his comments, what do you make of that trip and what it means for Saskatchewan? Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I think where there is some agreement is that we have a story to tell here in this province, and whether that's farming practices, some of the opportunity for sure here in the province when it comes to critical minerals, potential sources of energy, that there is a story to tell, and we should be telling that story. What we saw from the government, though, was the decision to embark on the most expensive trip that we've seen any government take in this province, and to make that choice alone. We're the only province that paid almost $1 million for a pavilion at COP28. We saw the choice by this government to advertise on the Dubai subway, and we also saw the decision to take a number of groups, almost half of which were not even from Saskatchewan, which was a curious choice, I think. Most people would agree, whether that was other governments or universities from other provinces. I think as we always should be judged on as leaders, as governments, we'll see when the results come back. If this was good value for money of the people of the province, how much it actually cost, and again, why the decision was made, that was made by no other government to go it on their own, to take out the pavilion. I think that remains to be seen, and we'll continue to have questions about that.
Looking ahead to 2024, and there's an election scheduled. You won 2 by-elections in the city. You gained 2 seats. How do you build on that momentum, and what's your thought process going into a year where you're the leader of the opposition and you also have an election campaign on the horizon?
Mm-hmm. I think where we have had success over the last year, increasing our seats by 3, has been that focus on building the party, getting back to basics, really connecting with the issues that people care about, reflecting their concerns. Like you've seen us talk about the cost of living, because that really is the number one issue that people have in the province. Proposing solutions like we have with the fuel PST abatement, and really being focused on not making decisions or focusing solely on decisions made in the Assembly, but going out into communities, meeting with groups, meeting with municipalities, meeting with people on the doorsteps and building those solutions with them. I think you'll see more of that. I'm incredibly excited to get into the new year and continue that work. We have some momentum. I think there's a lot of excitement around the work that we're doing, and certainly encouraged by the people that are coming in and wanting to be part of that. But we know we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we're excited to get out there and continue that work.
And it's the holiday season. Do you have a holiday tradition, a family thing that you're looking forward to doing to take your mind and off this place over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, we we'll be in the city for a little bit, and we'll go out to Mom and Dad's. I have a brother that lives in Cardiff, one in Meadow Lake. Their families join us. It's a natural ice rink in Lang, so we'll see if it's not looking good for being able to go for a skate or go out to Redlegs for. There's a slough south of town we like to go out to go skiing or walking around on the ice. Maybe that's not looking so great. But the biggest thing is just that time spent with family, and having time to reflect on how lucky we are to live in this beautiful province, all of the riches that we have, but most importantly the time to be able to spend with family, relaxing, recharging, and getting ready to head into the election year in the new year.
Thanks for your time, Carla.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.